Sofija Malberg yra vadinama mokyklos bibliotekos veiklos iniciatorė. Labai inovatyviai dirba, neseniai pasirodė jos knyga apie tai, kaip gali mokyklos bibliotekininkas dirbti. Kol kas lietuviškai knyga nėra išleista, bet ką gali žinoti, gal po metų galėsim ir knygą pristatyti. Tik dar prieš tai noriu padėkoti Ugdymo plėtotės centrui, kuris padėjo mums organizuoti šitą renginį ir kuris vykdo mūsų inicijuotą projektą skirtą medijų ir informacinio raštingumo skatinimui Lietuvoje. Tai nuo savęs ačiū, perduodu žodį Sofija. Sofija, the floor is yours.
Labas. It's brilliant to be here and to have applause even before I've started. The school library as a pedagogical resource instead of a physical place. How to integrate media and information literacy within the learning environment. Last spring, I published a book in cooperation with my colleague, ICT instructor, Theo Graner. And the book is called Bibliotekarien som medpedagog, eller Varför sitter ingen i långdisken? And I understand that you don't get the message there, so I'll translate it to you. It would mean the librarian as a co-teacher. The content is based on my professional experience as a librarian in cooperation with other professions. I work with teachers, I work with the ICT instructor, and I work with career counselors, other professions within the school, with the aim to be a very important part in the students achieving their goals. Adolf Fredriks Musikklasser is situated in the center of Stockholm. It's an elementary school with a focus on choral singing. It has about 1,200 students and between the ages of 10 to 16. The school library has a generous media budget and is very well equipped, and they have one librarian, me, and we have books, of course, both fiction and non-fiction. The library is a complete learning environment with books, magazines, databases, other electronic resources, computers, of course, and functioning as a mental playground, we say, for aspiring young adults, nurtured by me as the librarian. The students also have access to a variety of databases to fulfill their educational requirements. I have a full-time employment, but as I'm partly on parental leave, I have 2 small children, I work only 80%. But I have the caretaker to help me put a book in the shelves. And I should say too that I don't do any lending at the library. The lending, the students do it themselves. You don't need to have a higher education to lend books to children. They can do it themselves. They're fully responsible of their own library cards and do that. My job is to be a part of the learning process, to be an important and vital aid to the teachers, be a co-teacher, co-pedagogue. The students frequently use the school library for their educational needs as well as for their personal leisure. A major aspect of my professional approach concerning the school library is to consider the library as an active educative function instead of a physical place. Of course, there is still this room with books and shelves, things you can see and you can touch. Of course, it's extremely important, it's vital to have a meeting place. But the library is more focused on my competence, my experience as a librarian, and how I can be an active part in the students' learning process. That's more important, that's the library. So, in fact, the library can be in the library itself, or in the classroom, or in the auditorium, or in the corridor, or in the cafe. The library is wherever my competence is playing a vital part in the students' learning process. And my sole mission as a librarian is to help students to achieve their educational goals, mainly concerning media and information literacy, but of course even literary skills. But today's topic is mostly media and information literacy, so I'm focusing on this. So, how is this achieved? Well, the first thing is to make a plan, a library program focusing on media and information literacy, of course. And everything has to be based on the school curriculum. This is extremely important, because if it's a separate occasion, it will be no long-term benefit to the students. It has to be integrated in the educational process. It has to be a natural part in the teacher's program. So the library has to be considered. The Swedish national curriculum, happily, does make an emphasis on integrating media and information literacy in the program. It states in almost every subject that the students have to achieve to have a critical thinking to sources and to that special subject. So here's the key thing to my work as a librarian. Here's my mission. I can come in here and say, okay, that's one of my major competencies, media and information literacy. You have to do it, and I can be of help. We can do things together. You're a teacher, I'm a librarian. Of course, we have different missions here, of course. Luckily, for me as a librarian, I can do all the things that a teacher can do. I can do all the fun, the cool stuff that amuses and is being a learning product for the children, for the students. But I can skip the part that's not so funny to give grades. So my presence in the classroom is often seen as a very positive one for the children, for the students, because they can be open, they know they don't have to hide that they haven't understood. They can say, Sophia, I didn't understand this, can you explain to me? Of course I can. And they're free to do so, because I don't put any grades on them, and they know that. Well, the teachers have their professional skills, and I have mine, and if we work together, we'll achieve things that we wouldn't have achieved if we'd worked separately. So we can work side by side with the teacher to enhance the learning environment for their specific fields. The combination of our skills, our professional skills, give the students a broader perspective and an ability to go further than if we had worked separately. The students are used to my presence in the classroom, and my participation in their learning process has become second nature to them. They tend to approach to me as often as to their regular teacher. And what's even better is, what happens in the classroom is the start of building a very warm relationship between me as a librarian and them as students. What happens in the classroom doesn't stay in the classroom. It continues after the class. The students have the time to think, to reflect on what's happened in the classroom, and that they can take on that discussion and continue it in the library with me. Of course they can continue with their teacher, of course, but the teacher has another lesson, doesn't have time, occupied in a meeting. But the library is open, and very often I'm there at their service to continue the discussion, to talk about something that they thought about that evening after the lesson, or something they didn't understand, or things that they just want to discuss because it was very, very exciting and they liked it. And also, we're building a relationship. So if they already know me from the classroom, they tend to come more often to the library, because the library librarian is someone they already know. They know my name, they know how I work, know how we can communicate on a good basis. But how is this achieved? This might sound quite theoretical, but when I started in this library 10 years ago as a librarian, we were 2 librarians, in fact, but we've had economical cutdowns, unfortunately, and it's only me working there now, but I'm continuing the work that we've started. At the beginning, the school library was a room full of books, nothing else. And very old books, books from the 60s. So the first thing was to get rid of all of those old books, get new ones that the children, the students want to read, and things they can use in their education, of course. And we had to start a library program. And this was very difficult in the beginning, because the teachers had a very traditional view on us as librarians. They thought, okay, librarians are supposed to stay in the library. They're supposed to lend books. That's their job. And we were not satisfied with that. We wanted more. Lending books is for anyone can do that. We have a higher education. It's a waste of space, waste of time, waste of money to put us doing book lending. We can do more. We're academicals. So we decided we had to make a program, of course. And we started. In the beginning, to be honestly, we did things a bit here, a bit there. We did things that didn't benefit the students in the long run. But that was a start to build a relationship with the teachers. We tried to get into the classroom. But at the beginning, there at Adolf Fredrik Musikklasser, to be honestly, the climate wasn't very easy to come into the classroom. The teacher were used to having their classroom for themselves. Nobody is entering my classroom. They were hardly speaking to the other colleagues, the other teacher colleagues. They had their classroom, they did their thing, it has always worked, and it'll work forever. The same thing all the time. And then there are 2 librarians saying, hi, I want to go into your classroom. I want to be a co-teacher with you. They didn't understand. What are they doing, those young women? What are they doing? And first, they didn't understand at all. They wanted us to, they couldn't say, stay in the library, but that's what they thought. They wanted to say that. But we started, my colleague at the time, Monica Staubhalling, we started to go out to the teachers' conferences and saying, hi, I'm a competent person, I know this, I want to do this, and I want to do it with you. When can we book a time to plan these things? And the teachers, they felt a bit threatened. Someone's want to go into my classroom, look at my planning, do teaching with me. Why on earth do I have to accept this? Some teachers said, no, it's not possible. Some teachers said, a little bit. We'll try once. And we tried once. And we could do it a bit more next time. And even a bit more the next time, because the teacher found this very nurturing for the children, for the students. It has played an important role in their part to teach student things. So we had different competencies, and that's the key. When we do things together from different competence view, we achieve things that wouldn't happen if we were both librarians or both teachers. And after a while, the other teachers, they had said no. They looked at what's going on over there. What's that librarian doing that with my colleague of mine? And they asked the colleague, their teacher colleague, what are you doing? What on earth are you doing? why is the librarian so often in your classroom? And I've seen her been planning things with you. What are you planning? And the teacher told that person, we're doing this and this and this. The children love it, and it's a vital part of my education, of my their learning process. And that teacher became a bit interested. Okay, might try this one a bit. And they approached us and asked, what are you doing? Could we do the same thing? Yeah, that's what we wanted. So it started like that and continued step by step. But the next thing was to approach the school, the headmaster in fact. We had to approach the headmaster and tell him what we wanted to do. We said, we have a library program. And the headmaster said, library program, okay, what are you going to do? Lend books, book talks perhaps? No, we want more. We want media and information literacy. What is that? And we told him, this is a vital part in the school curriculum. Almost every subject, media and information literacy, is mentioned. So if we can do things together with the teachers, it will help the students and be a good thing for the school, good PR. And the students will satisfy the teachers as well as the parents. The headmaster thought, okay, this is a good thing. It's important. And we tell him, okay, good that you agree with us, but we need things to do this. It won't come for free. We need a media budget, and most importantly, we need you to go out to the teachers and say, this is the library program, and we're all going to do this. We're going to cooperate with the librarians. Because if we do, and of course he let us have a lot of time at conferences, for example, even the first, after working only, I thought, 4 or 5 months, he gave us an entire day to work on media and information literacy with the teachers. He said, okay, all right, do whatever you want. And all the teachers were there in their auditorium with us, and we had all day to work on media and information literacy with them. And we thought, what are we going to do with these teachers that have a very traditional role view on what a librarian can do? Okay, we're going to teach them what we would teach the students. So we made lessons for them. This, and thought, this, if they see what we can give to the students, they like it, and they book us into their lessons. And that is really what happened. They had to see what we can do. Because we knew that we were competent as librarians. We had a higher education. We had certain things that we knew very well, such as media and information literacy, but the teacher didn't know. The teacher wouldn't come to the library and want to cooperate with us because they thought there wouldn't be no point. Why would they cooperate with someone who's doing book lending only? So we decided that we had to go out to the teachers. We had to assist at every teacher's conference, be there all the time, at their coffee breaks, at their study rooms, everywhere. We had to be there. And in the beginning, the teacher thought, are they going to be everywhere? And do they always have to say something and ask those questions? What to do about media and information literacy? They were a bit fed up with us, to be honest. But in the end, they got used to us being there, and they realized they're not going to go away. They're going to stay there. And eventually they started to listen to us and started to see that we had a point. And in 2011, something happened. I'd been on parental leave with my second child, and I returned to school at my work, and you know how it is when you return to work. You do love your children, but it's nice to go to the toilet by yourself, if you know what I mean. I loved to go back to work, and I was full of energy, and I wanted to do new things. We're going to achieve things that we haven't achieved before. But two important things had happened. In fact, three. Number one, there was a new law, new library law, that said schools have to provide library services to the students. This was very new, but of course, at Adolf Fredriks Musikklasse there was already a good library service, so this just a base. Secondly, we had a new school curriculum that stated that in almost every school subject, the students have to do media and information literacy. They have to have a critical thinking about sources concerning that particular subject. And I realized this is a completely new start for me. Here's the turning point. Have you been to the swimming pool and there's a trampoline and you go out there and you jump? This was the trampoline I needed. And I started to think, because I don't know how it's here in Latvia, but in Sweden, the teachers are supposed to not only do teaching, but they have to do quite a few administrational tasks. And so many of them, they're just fed up with them. And they don't have the time to talk to their colleagues. They can talk to their colleagues, fellow colleagues, teachers that are teaching the same subject. Okay, all right, but they don't have the time to go to talk to other teachers teaching other subjects. And this was a real problem, because the school curriculum also states that they have to do this integration between subjects to give the students a broader perspective. So they were a bit concerned, and I thought, this is my chance as a librarian. I will go out to those teachers' conferences to meet all those teachers, those different teachers teaching different subjects. And I'm just going to listen. What are they talking about? And I went out there and I listened, and I realized one thing. Those teachers teaching different subjects, they had the same type of discussions, the same type of problems, and they discuss the same type of topics. But they don't know that the other person over there is talking about the same thing. So I, as a librarian, could go out there, meet everyone who hadn't got the time to meet each other. And I got an idea, how can I combine these different subjects to each other to make it happen? I had an idea, made a plan, lesson plan, who's going to do that, who's going to do that, what can I contribute to as a librarian, what can the teacher do, what will we teach the children, the students. And we had a plan, and how is this achieved? How will they know, will the teacher know that the students really have learned something? And how can I combine this to the school curriculum? That is the most important thing. And I went back to the teachers and said, I have an idea. We have a project here. You can cooperate with that and that subject and to achieve these goals stated in the school curriculum. And the teachers looked at me, and they realized that someone had done the work that they hadn't got the time to do. Well, if you say no at that point as a teacher, you're a bit dumb, aren't you? Most of the teachers said, yes, we do want that. The others said, yes, we want that, but not now, later. So that was a good point, presenting ideas, lesson plans that were already made up. And that's what I think of as my role as a librarian. I make things happen. I see problems, I solve them, and make them happen. But this implicates a different kind of role as a librarian. I have to be out there. I have to do the things that I don't really have the courage to do. I have to go out there to the teachers, even if they don't know that they need me yet. I have to assist at conferences. I have to stand up to tell them about my competence and what I can do and what they can do and what we can do together. I have to demand things, but it doesn't matter if I'm very competent and I stay in the library. Being competent, it doesn't help because the teacher don't know. They're not going to come to me to cooperate with me because they don't know that they can. I have to go to the teachers and tell them, I can do this. So I have to have a different view of my role as myself as a librarian. But it implicates also that the teachers are prepared that this new librarian is doing something else that they would have expected. They have to be secure in their own professional role as teachers to be able to open up the classroom to me. Because if they aren't, it's going to be very difficult. But it takes time, of course. And of course I have to do quite a lot of work with the headmaster. He or she has to approve to my library plan, my new library role. One of the first things that we did, Monica and me, was to say, okay, if we're going to do teaching, if we're going to be in the classroom, this means that at some point the librarian is not in the library. The library will be empty. There will be no librarian at the library. Okay. We need time to do planning, to do lessons, of course. We can't have the library open all day from 8 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't work. We do need time to integrate different subjects, to do the PR for the library, meet the teachers. So we said to the headmaster, we need to cut down on the library opening hours. And at first this was just, okay, why? It's important that the library is open. Yes, it is. But it depends on what you want to do with the library. Do you want it as a lending service only? Okay, then the library has to be open anytime. Okay, I agree, but we didn't want to do that. It has to be a lending service too, of course, and a meeting point and all these things happening in the library. But the most important part of our work is to help the students achieve their goals. So now on, the library is open from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And when, in the beginning, the teachers thought this was a big problem for the teachers. It's terrible. The students are going to die. They can't come in through the library until 10 o'clock. And they were very, very upset. And they went to us and said, this is a disgrace. The library doesn't open until 10 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing? You have 2 people there. Why can't you open the library? We are occupied. We're doing pedagogical stuff, we said. And luckily, we had already talked to the headmaster. He had said, okay, I support this. So we could, it came in very handy here, of course, we could say, okay, this is something that a headmaster had decided. He's agreed. He thinks it's a good thing. Go to him and talk to this. Yes, I will, the teachers said, because they didn't believe us. And they went to the headmaster, and the headmaster confirmed what we had said. All right. All right then. They didn't know what to do. They had to be satisfied that the library opened at 10 o'clock. There was nothing they could do. And now this is not a problem at all. It's natural. The library opens at 10 o'clock because they do know that we do other things. We do classes with them. And they see the benefit of this for their students. So then there's no arguing at all. And when I say that, of course I have a plan. I know that in this grade I want to do this and this and this with the students. And the teachers know that. So nowadays, I don't have to do much PR. Not for the younger students' teachers. Because I only send an email and say, okay, it's time to do this project and I've booked these classes for you. This time and that date. Is it all right? And I get a response that, it's all right, welcome. Different kind of attitude. But sitting here, it's sounding very appealing, of course, but how do you do it? This is just theory. What do they do there in the library? So this is what I've talked about, the library viewed as a pedagogical resource instead of a physical place. But I thought that you wanted to know what kind of projects I do. I could do some examples. The first thing is the library mystery. This is when the children, the students, come to us. They just started our school and they're about 10 years old. And they're still very, very playful. They have a playful curiousness that I can use for my pedagogical reasons, needs. So the children are invited to the library 3 times. The first time is this is a library, it works like this, you have books, magazine, etc. How to borrow books, etc. They get the library card. Second time is we do searching. How to search for books, magazine, other resources in the digital library catalog. And the third time, the most exciting one. The children are gathered in the library and I come in and I look all devastated and I tell them, oh, something very, very terrible has happened. You know what? I found out there is a library book thief among us. But the problem is, if I go out there sneaking, trying to find out who the library thief is, they'll know, they'll get suspicious because they know I'm the librarian. So it's a problem. But I need you, if I can train you as library detectives. That would be a very good thing. Do you want to be library detectives? And they all do, of course. Because this is something completely different to doing maths in the classroom. This is something exciting. So they all say yes, of course, and we do, as we've seen on telly. We've seen that the mystery series, that the detectives all have a crime scene, of course, a plan of where the crime was committed. Right, we have this plan, we have the library, see, from where has the book been stolen? Which book has been stolen? And luckily, one of my colleagues, has been able to make a photo of the thief. But unfortunately, you see only a part of the hand or some part of their clothing or something. But we do have a photo. And perhaps we can gather, is it a man or a woman, a child or an adult? And from this, of course, this demands quite a bit of preparation from my part. I've placed photos, I've placed clues everywhere in the library, behind books, behind shelves, behind computers, behind chairs, everywhere. And to be able to find these clues as a student, you have to use the library catalog. Because there are a lot of questions that will lead you to these clues, but you need to master the library catalog. And finally, the students will find these clues in the library, and the clues are letters. And if they combine these letters, they'll find a name. And who on earth is this name? They realize that this person works in their school. It's a teacher or an adult, other adult working at their school. Oh, it's the ICT instructor, or it's the career counselor, or it's the headmaster who is the book thief. And we sneak out of the library, all very quietly, but they are quite excited, so it's quite difficult to keep them quiet. We go to the presumed library thief. We open the door, and I said, "Hello, I'm the librarian. I've got a bunch of students here. They want to do an article for the school journal. Can they do an interview with you?" "Okay," this person says. And the students have to prove that this person is the thief by asking questions that they use the catalogue to get to, of course. And they realize this is the thief. And one student has the mission to find the stolen goods, to find the stolen book. So me and the other student, we talk to the presumed book thief, and the other person, the student, trying to find the book. Naturally, they find the book, and we realize this is the thief. And the children do love it. I also have to tell them that it was all a setup. There is no real book thief. This person is not a thief, it's a teacher but this is a very good start and the beginning for the children to the library. The next step, the children are about 11 years old. We try to finding and evaluating sources. They have to do a project in social sciences, perhaps, and I'm the one who's telling them how to find reliable sources. What is Google? How do you use the search engine Google? What is Google, in fact? Copyright. Can I use pictures I find on the internet? Or can't I? Or why? How can I evaluate my sources? How do I know that they are real? I can trust them. Can I trust them or not? What to consider? This is a start to media and information literacy. Grade number 6, children are about 12 years old, and publicity, PR, is a major concern in the school curriculum. To find a critical approach to PR. And this is a project between Swedish social sciences, drawing classes, and home economics, and the library, of course, because it's my idea. The children, I go to the classroom and I have quite a lot of digital photos of PR, of advertising, and we're discussing these adverts from an ethical perspective, from a gender perspective, and how do these PR makers, how do they do these PRs? How do they use text? How do they use images, colors? Do they use different colors to attract different target groups? What kind of things do they want us to feel things? How do they want us to make us to buy those products? What's their method? And is that method different in different cultures? Of course, they realize that the method in India would be quite different than those used in Sweden. But does it differ in another Western European country, as France, for example? Well, it does. And how? This talk is made quite a lot of their students' discussions that we're building on and discussing together. And it lasts about 1 hour, but the students do tend to like this a very lot because they can all have a relationship to PR. And they love to discuss it. We could have continued for 3 hours with no problem at all. but we have 1 hour to do this. And finally, the students are to make a film, a PR film, for a certain product. Their mission would be to do PR for a product that doesn't exist, and, by the way, impossible to sell, such as a frying pan with plenty of holes, or a keyhole that would fit with every key. Very practical. If you've lost your key, you just go to the neighbor and say, "Could I borrow your key?" And it'll fit into your keyhole. Very practical, don't you think? Or an already used toothbrush. And you have a target group that you haven't decided by yourself. So you might end up doing advertising for children food with a chili flavor, selling it to quite a bunch of very old ladies who are very economical. Or you might find yourself doing PR for frying pans full of holes. And the target group is a bunch of very tired children from kindergarten. Do the math. This is not easy. You have to be clever. You have to be creative. You have to use humor. You've got to have a sense of humor to sell this product. How are we going to use text, images? What colors do this target group like? What kind of arguments do they like? How to make them buy those products? I do like when those films are ready. They're quite amusing to watch. I think my time is quite running out here. And, well, the Higher Grades, we're continuing that work about reliable sources, talking about local press, national press, what's the difference, how do I know, that is it a journalist who's written this text or someone else, is it reliable or not? And later on, search strategies, how to make my search query as good as possible. Because if you make a search query that is not good, you'll have a very bad answer. And sometimes one word can mean very different things in different areas. Consider that. How to put your search query to make it very pertinent, so you find what you're looking for. In the 9th grade, the students are about to choose their way out in the big world. They're going to leave us and continue their higher education, gymnasium. So they're about 15 years old. They're going to make a decision that's very important to them. What am I going to be? What am I going to do when I'm grown up? What education am I going to choose now? So this is a project with the students' counselor, career counselor, and my part in this, to prepare the children to they're going to a school fair where different schools are trying to tell them, go to our school, choose our school. It's better than the others. It's a very difficult choice, of course. And the students get a catalogue to their home with a PR for different schools, but the students don't necessarily realize this is PR. They think this is information, but it's not information at all. It's very, very much PR. The schools are saying, okay, if you go to our school, you get a computer. Okay, nice, I want a computer. Should I choose that school? Yes, you can choose that school, but what does it mean you get a computer? This school doesn't have endlessly masses of money. If they're going to give you a computer, it means it costs somewhere else. That means they have less money to put on your education. You perhaps might find yourself having lessons with new teachers because that computer costed what that teacher costed. Or the school says, well, we do like you, so we'll treat you. We'll pay your lunch in town every day at restaurants. Okay, I like eating at restaurants, don't I? But what does it really mean? If they're paying you to go out to restaurants every day at lunchtime, it means they don't have any food in the school to treat you with. And if they say, okay, we're going to give you a gym card, that means probably that they don't have any physical education. And so on. So this is quite a very practical start for the students to have a critical thinking over something that really matters to them. So they are quite engaged in what we are doing. The book lending as a self-service, very, very important, because otherwise it will take a lot of your precious time that you can use much better as a co-pedagogue, of course. You might need to have an ICT instructor. I do work a very lot with my ICT instructor to have a digital perspective on everything I do. Sometimes he works with me in the projects. Sometimes he learns me how to do things, and sometimes he learns me how to do things to teach to the teachers. So I teach the teachers how to do digital things. You have to have a realistic media budget, that you do have the money to buy books, to buy electronic resources, to buy magazines. Absolutely vital. And you have to be able to have the perspective that if the students want books, they'll have those books. You want to say yes to the students. You don't want to say no. If the student comes to you and say, I'd really like to read this book, of course they are. That's your job as a librarian, to give them those books that they really, really want to read. We have to have a library program based on the school's pedagogical curriculum, of course. And this is all mentioned in this book, as I talked about. And if you do want to get in contact with me, you could send me an email, or if you're in Stockholm, please come and visit me. If you're on Twitter, I'm Biblans. And do you have any questions, by the way? I do love questions. I love talking to you. And what's your problem in your school world?